Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic? That you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same? That you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which you are about to enter, so help you God. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publicists Association's Let It Be Known. As you see there, the new senator being sworn in out of California. We're going to talk a little bit about that this morning, as we did yesterday. LaFonza Butler is sworn in. Also, chaos in the House. Speaking of Congress, chaos in the House. Kevin McCarthy removed as the Speaker. What went down and what's next? Also, Texas forces changes on Latino and Black parents and students. More shenanigans out of Texas when it comes to education, particularly for Black and brown students. We will discuss that. And what was Elon Musk's Twitter strategy and who helped him? Well, the details have emerged and they are interesting, to say the least. Also, the Griot is planning to team with AP today on a very, very interesting, if not important, discussion that we'll tell you about as well. And we'll talk to Brandon Weathersby, the Presidential Communications Director at American Bridge 21st Century. But first, let's bring on our all-star panel this morning. Denise Rolock Barnes, the publisher of the Washington Informer, Lauren Burke, the Capitol Hill journalist extraordinaire, and of course, the one and only, I only have until 8 a.m. this morning, Barrington Salmon is joining us. And he comes in late and says, I only have until 8. What is your deal, Barrington?
That's life, bro.
That's life?
That's life.
Oh, gosh.
And still lots of stuff going on. Good morning, all.
But first, before we get into anything, good morning. Breaking news overnight, or last night anyway, got a text from the aforementioned Lauren Burke, first to alert me to this, that there was a shooting on the campus of Morgan State University, the famous HBCU in Baltimore. 5 victims, 4 men and 1 woman who range in age from 18 to 22, hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries. Lauren, this continues to happen on college campuses, grade school campuses. Nothing is being done.
Yeah, well, there's not too much that can be done because of the Second Amendment and the easy transferability of guns in the United States. So we are going to see more shootings in all places, not just colleges, but we've seen them all over the place. A typical thing that we see, certainly in Washington, D.C., just passed their 200 murders. I'm not saying they're all shootings, but the fact that just the other night we had a member of Congress carjacked at gunpoint in Southwest D.C. We show you the easy availability of firearms, and those were 3 juveniles involved in that. So yes, we have a problem with violence, and we are seeing a rise in violent crime. Somebody turned to me the other day and said it was like the 1990s. It's not quite like the 1990s. My dad was a police officer in the 1990s, and I think we were at 2,000 murders in New York for about 3 or 4 years during the crack cocaine epidemic. So, but something is clearly going on, whether it's COVID related, after COVID, or no one knows, but something is going on.
Yeah, Denise, as one of our esteemed viewers, Power 96 noted that it happened during homecoming week, but it doesn't even matter. It's happening all the time, Denise.
Well, it's my understanding, too, that this is not the first time that a shooting has happened on Morgan State's campus, and not the first time one has happened during homecoming week. You know, it's unfortunate when parents send their children off to college, that this is one of the things that they have to consider. You know, how we used to think about academics,
right?
Dorm life, cost of tuition, all that. Now we have to really think about, not that we didn't consider safety, but gun, you know, accessibility to guns, what the crime rate has been, and not only top of that, but now murders on campus. So there's a real concern, like I agree with Lauren, that there's not a whole lot that can be done, but this issue of security, you know, universities are going to have to find a way to impress upon the local community as well as the student community that they're putting forth all efforts to make their campuses as safe as possible. It's my understanding too that, and I, you know, haven't confirmed this, but that this shooting, as it has happened in other places, was not far from where the security office sits. So, you know, these security people who've been hired by these universities have a tremendous, I think, level to reach in order to ensure that they're going to do their jobs. And like I said, and to make parents as comfortable as possible that, you know, their children will be safe.
Yeah. Barrington, so we know, we've heard you like 700,000 times on your thoughts on these type of things, but you know, again, we say it keeps happening, and we're hearing that nothing can be done. It's more, isn't it more that nothing is being done than nothing can be done?
Yeah, I was going to say that I don't agree with the assertion that nothing can be done, because there are practically anywhere else in the so-called developed world that you go, they're not having these murders, not having murders in these numbers.
But just to be clear, that this no one died last night. Just
yeah. But I mean, not dying doesn't mean that you're not left with the trauma.
Right.
Of being injured and that type of thing. I think one of the things that we have to avoid is to not continue to normalize the idea that there's nothing that we can do. The Republicans all across this country have the ones that are elected officials and policymakers and stuff. They're in bed with the National Rifle Association and other gun entities, and they have refused to do anything. I mean, we continue to see incidences with Uvalde and other places where young people are killed. In Jacksonville, when that white boy killed those 3 people, something can be done, but there's no political will to do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just say, Stacey, the thing that makes matters worse is that the more the less, let me put it this way, the less that policymakers are doing to enforce gun laws, the more people are taking this into their own hands, and more people, there's an increase in folks who are getting gun licenses, carrying guns, and consequently, you don't buy a gun not to use. Hopefully you won't have to, but it's precipitating an increased number in gun carriers.
Right.
So, it may not be like the 1990s, but it is a lot like the Wild Wild West at this point.
Oh, without question, without question. We will continue to monitor that situation in Baltimore, see whenever they might catch one. That's the other thing too, Lauren, Barrington, Denise. Here we are in HBCU. I hate to put it this way, but all the other active shooters at schools, they get killed, they get shot. These guys are at large, or this person or these persons are at large. Here we are the morning after. They don't know who did it yet.
Give them time. This is not a sitcom, Stacey. We're not going to solve the case in half an hour or an hour.
No, but Barrington, usually the shooter is taken down right away. And my point is,
or takes himself down.
Or he takes himself down. My point is, so now we have, you hate to make everything about race, but it's before our faces. This happens at a Black university. No doubt the victims are Black, right? I'd be surprised if they all wasn't Black. They're young, 18 to 22. And here we are this morning, the morning after, saying the police are asking anybody if they have any information to try and locate the shooter or shooters. That's my point.
Well, one of the things,
7 years later, who shot Tupac Shakur? So I'm not really, and for that matter, Malcolm X. So I'm never surprised at the slowness of law enforcement when Black folks are involved, no matter what.
And that's my point, Lauren. Yep.
But I will say, though, I was somewhat concerned after seeing a video on Twitter where police officers were combing through the dorm where the shooting actually was supposed to have taken place. And just the tactics that they may have used as they went from dorm room to dorm room, because in their mind, every dorm room they went to, the perpetrator could have been in that room, and how they would manage that with those students. You could have ended up with a bunch of lawsuits because of maybe the aggressiveness of the officers. So, we haven't heard that part of the story. But it's almost like, firefighters or whatever, they come in and put out a fire and they destroy your house at the same time. So dorm rooms could have been, turned upside down. Students, I don't know, right. I don't know what they had to go in with, but that's, and then, we still have that no snitch, rule in our community. So a lot of things can come into play here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about that yesterday with Suge Knight, who, other than the suspect that's in custody in Tupac's murder, he's the only other witness to the murder, and he says, "I'm not snitching." so it's you're right. That's no snitch. It's real. It's real. Turning our attention though, as we'll continue to follow that and see what ultimately transpires there at Morgan State and HBCU, but turn our attention to LaPhonza Butler. Lauren, you were there on Capitol Hill for the swearing in. We talked about it yesterday. Emily's List, she comes from Emily's List. What is the issue here that the CBC, because the CBC is not altogether happy. It's not about LaPhonza. It's about Barbara Lee.
Yeah, well, the CBC sent a letter to Governor Gavin Newsom pushing for longtime Congresswoman from California, Barbara Lee, who is also running for that seat, to take the place of Dianne Feinstein, who, of course, passed away last week. And Gavin Newsom seems to have completely ignored that. And pick someone who is effectively a lobbyist. There's nothing wrong with Emily's List. There's nothing sinister about SEIU, but that is a different profile than what you typically have in a U.S. Senate seat. You typically have somebody who is an elected official, and particularly if you're talking about a state like California. All this talking about, I don't want to pick somebody, who's running. I'm not sure why he qualified with that other than to take Barbara Lee out of the running. But Adam Schiff, of course, is involved, who's another congressperson from California, who has $30 million sitting around, is backed by Nancy Pelosi. The point here is that it's a little bit of an odd choice. This is not really a commentary so much on LaFonza Butler. She seems completely intelligent and all that, and it's all good. But the bigger piece here is that, do you want a progressive? To me, this is a very, very sharp look into the fact that the corporate Democratic Party, which is a lot like the corporate Republican Party at times, does not want somebody sitting around who's talking about WIC, who's talking about poor people, who's talking about homelessness. That would be Barbara Lee. Okay. I mean, basically, Emily's List, all they're talking about in this moment, which of course is appropriate after the Dobbs decision, is abortion, and electing women. But I'm just saying that, it's a certain type of person that the Democratic Party seems to not want around. And I've seen it certainly in Virginia. And now we're seeing it in this moment where Gavin Newsom picks somebody. And I think this is more related to the political career of Gavin Newsom and tipping the cap to Emily's List and corporate Democrats than it is tipping the cap to actual people who do want people around, like Cori Bush and AOC and some of these more progressive members who are talking about real problems that people care about.
Barrington, Power 96 says that CBC should see this as a non-issue, but based on what Lauren just broke down, what's your sense of it?
Lauren is absolutely correct. I think one of the issues that I don't think us as Black people break down and flesh out and chat about enough is the fact that corporate Democrats run the party. And it's kind of ironic to me because the CBC has become a corporate arm of the party as well. When you go to the annual legislative conference, everywhere you go, you see all these big signs of all these corporate donors and all that type of stuff. And in my mind, and as illustrated by Color of Change and a bunch of stories that I read some time ago, there's not a whole lot that you can say or do without permission from the overlords. And so this is an issue that we have to figure out. Do we continue to support a party that does not deal with the issues that are most important to us? Because what Lauren said is true. A Cori Bush and AOCs and those folks, they're the ones that are pushing forward the issues that are of most concern to us as Black people. So I'm not surprised. I mean, the governor go make an excuse, but he would not. It's interesting because from what I understand, they basically are trying to tip it towards Adam Schiff.
And so, Denise, you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I'm one of those that really would love to have been in the back room to hear the strategy. There has to be some strategy to this, and the strategy is not the here and now, because although folks wanted Senator Feinstein to step down because of her age and health issues, but they're looking 2 years down the road. You can't really plan these things in the moment. So this is a placeholder, and if she really wants this seat, she's going to have to run against a formidable candidate. Like Lauren said, in a year and essentially 4 months. So, that may be part of the strategy. I don't know. Let Barbara Lee hang out there and do her thing, and prove to the state that not that she hasn't proven it, but, to garner her support, in addition to whatever the governor's looking for in the long term. But, for the moment, Barrington might be correct when he said this may be a non-issue for the CBC.
Two quick things, Lauren. One, what I thought, my understanding was too that one of the provisions that he was making that Newsom said if he selected one of the candidates, they would have to pledge not to run for the seat again. And two, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren. And two, Mike V says that he sees LaFonza as a potential VP running mate in 2028 for Newsom long term. Your quick thoughts on both those?
Well, these stipulations with regard to being a placeholder are not, who cares? If you want to run for the U.S. Senate, you're going to run for the U.S. Senate, whether Gavin Newsom says so or not. I think the bigger play for him, whether he wants her for some running mate later or not, is that he just effectively split the vote. There's not much of a black vote in California as it is. It's under 10% black. And so it's not like Maryland or something. If Barbara Lee runs, she wins or something. He basically, I think, tried to damage Barbara Lee, because that's the person on the ballot who's impacted should Senator Butler decide to run for the Senate in 2024. So that's the only thing that makes any sense, because you'd be helping Barbara Lee, obviously, as the sitting incumbent, had he picked Barbara Lee. The other way you could have done, if we're doing placeholders, you could have done Maxine Waters, you could have done Nancy Pelosi, you could have said, okay, well, this is their last years out the door or whatever. I doubt Pelosi would have said, yeah, I think I'll run and be in the Senate for 6 years. She probably would have said that. So it's not a placeholder moment. He's tipping the cap to corporate money, which is Emily's List. He's tipping the cap to SEIU, which is labor. And he is saying, I want these people backing me should I either get into the race next year if something were to happen, knock on wood. I'm not saying anything's going to happen to Joe Biden, but next year or 4 years from now. That's what this is about. Mm-hmm. This is about politics. It's not about policy. And it sure as hell isn't about anything that has anything to do with policy in California, where Karen Bass just had to appoint a homelessness czar for the homelessness problem in California. They have two big problems in there: immigration, California, and homelessness. You don't see any of that coming out of LaFonza Butler's resume. That's all I'm saying. I think LaFonza Butler is a really smart person. I think she's going to do great. It's not really about her. It's the symbolic nature of who he didn't pick and what that really means in the Democratic Party. And we see the decisions that are made that go to policy.
And really, 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 really quick, Southbound 3000 is asking whether or not LaFonza would just simply be Newsom's puppet. I
doubt it. I think she's a smart person. She's not a dum-dum. I mean, she's not a complete airhead. This is not to say that Mo Cowan was an airhead, but we have had placeholder senators that you said to yourself, what is this person doing here? I mean, we had a guy that was the chief of staff of somebody who was, all of a sudden he's a U.S. senator. And there was nothing about him that said to me that there was anything deep there. LaFonza Butler is a deep person. She's not a terrible pick. It's not about that. It's about, think about what Barbara Lee has stood for. The only vote against the Iraq war, talking about poverty and WIC all the time, somebody who had also been on welfare, been a victim of domestic violence. Barbara Lee is a statement pick in terms of policy for real people out there in a country with over 40 million people in poverty.
Barrington, the fact of the matter is that these politicians seem to think that all they got to do is give Black people a symbol and no substance. They think that we're going to be satisfied with the fact that any Black person is chosen, and that's garbage.
Yeah. Well, I want to throw one other thing in there too, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, what is the Congress seems to be stuck in quicksand right now. The Congress, the Senate, I mean, it's stuck. What kind of progress are they making? No matter what the voices are, they're not making any progress right now. They're going to spend the next couple of years dealing with Trump, arguing about, they can't even get a speaker.
Well,
right?
And we got at least, but along those lines, so there is a group of Congress people. We might as well talk about this. We know McCarthy was tossed out yesterday, and Barrington, before you have to run, I wanted you to weigh in on this too. There's a group of Congress, these MAGA right-wing.
I want to bring in Donald Trump.
Want Trump as speaker, and you don't have to be in Congress to be the speaker. So go ahead, Barrington.
But listen, what we're seeing, we have a bunch of folks in Congress, mostly Republicans. They don't give a damn about governing. They don't. All their interest. I mean, anybody who thought for a minute that Republicans cared about governing, when they had their last RNC shebang, there were no planks, there were no policies except loyalty to Donald Trump. So this group of people They can pretend that they're a political party, but they're not. They are chaos agents. I mean, and one would hope that when we continue to see the foolishness that they're doing, that they get run out of office when the next election happens, but it probably won't, because they're showing us who they are.
Yeah, this vacant speakership now, it's supposedly Lauren, the 10th is when they're going to reconvene and
the 11th.
The 11th.
Yeah.
And try and select a speaker. We know it took 15 rounds back in January. What are you looking at, Lauren?
Yeah, they're going to have some sort of forum on Tuesday to talk about who might be the speaker, and apparently have a vote on Wednesday, which will probably go a few ballots, because you're talking about a party that's completely dysfunctional, has no idea why they're here. You know, if you ask members, I talked to mostly CBC members, but I did listen to a fair amount of Republicans yesterday. I will give some of these Republicans a lot of credit. They seem to be getting tired of this routine. Okay. But
I noticed that too.
Yeah, they're getting edgier and edgier. But you still have the problem of people showing up in Washington, like Tim Scott, and I know he's on the Senate side, but you certainly have other people, like the people who voted against McCarthy yesterday, Gates and Andy Biggs and Eli Crane and Ken Buck and Bob Good of Virginia. The question for these people ultimately is, why are you here? What are you doing here? You're complaining about the swamp. You don't want to be in DC. Why am I in DC? And why are we here? Okay, then why did you take this job? Why did you run for office? And I guess what's motivating them is to stop other people from doing things. That's really what it boils down to. So you have a Democratic Party that believes in government, that wants to do things like the tax credit for children and WIC, et cetera, and fund public schools. And then you have a group of people trying to stop that party from doing it. So you have a dysfunctional, policyless Republican Party. And now they have shown it to the top of their leadership at speaker. By the way, you need a speaker to proceed. So they have to pick a speaker before anything else happens. That's why they're effectively adjourning for the rest of the week. So we'll see what happens next week. It'll probably be Scalise. I see this talk of Trump, which is not serious, but they're not serious. So a party that protects people who attack the U.S. Capitol and protects people who attack police officers and staff. And yes, it's personal to me. My boyfriend is a U.S. Capitol police officer. I do think that it is not serious. They're just not serious. And what we saw yesterday was a stellar example of that.
Well, Denise, when they were pushing McCarthy to let the government shut down, one of the things that kept coming up, Lauren mentioned law enforcement. They keep saying how they, meaning the GOP, keep saying about the borders. They keep complaining about the borders. They need more security at the borders. Well, a shutdown would have effectively eliminated a lot of the security at the border. So,
anybody with up to a third grade education can look at this and see, this is what did somebody say? Play the Benny Hill theme song. This is just outrageous. What's going on? I mean, you got a bunch of people in the Senate, 100, who've been elected to lead, and no one wants to lead. I mean, it's one of these cases now where we've got, one of the situation where you might want to give it to Mikey. And Mikey saying, for once, I don't want it, right? It's crazy. Nobody wants to lead, and nobody's thinking these issues through. And the point is, which concerns me, is that they keep getting reelected.
Mm-hmm.
That's what astounds me. Are we so apathetic to the process at this point, which we're going to become more so as voters? It's going to take everything to get people out to the polls, to deal with this dysfunction. And we're paying for it. We're paying these people. They wouldn't have lost their money had there been the shutdown. They continue to get paid. And nobody seems to be outraged by that. So, it's something happening with, the whole democratic process in this country. And we talk about police, what we can do to keep our campuses safe. I don't know what we're going to do to keep America safe.
Yeah, well, guys, we got to move on. I will mention this, a couple of topics we will tackle tomorrow, including Elon Musk and his sickness, among other things, in Texas, taking over Black and brown schools. Later today, though, Allen Media Group's multimedia platform, The Griot, in collaboration with the Associated Press, is set to present what organizers call a thought-provoking panel discussion titled Race and Democracy, the Facts and the Fury. The event will be broadcast on The Griot and AP's television, audio, and digital platforms, offering an opportunity for a diverse audience to engage in crucial conversations surrounding race. It happens this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So you might want to check that out. Mark Lamont Hill will moderate the discussion for the Griot. So check it out, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Now we want to bring in a guest. Brandon Weathersby is the Presidential Communications Director at American Bridge 21st Century, the largest research tracking and rapid response operation in the Democratic Party. Brandon is dedicated to holding Republicans accountable and has a wealth of knowledge on a wide range of political issues. Today, we discuss GOP presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy and his controversial statements on education, race, and systemic issues. Brandon, welcome to the Black Press's Let It Be Known.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm going to start this way, and Lauren and Denise can jump in at any point as well. Can you provide your perspective on Vivek Ramaswamy's recent comments regarding the education system being the quote-unquote civil rights issue of our time, and comparing it to ghettos, and also, of course, he compared Ayanna Pressley to modern Grand Wizards of the Ku Klux Klan. Can you respond to those issues there?
Sure. I think it's unfortunate, obviously, that the candidate for president is using this kind of rhetoric. I think that you've just laid out a pattern in his campaign of using this kind of rhetoric that dispatches these, in some cases, dog whistles, and other cases, just outright racist rhetoric. And unfortunately, I would say that this is a cornerstone of his campaign. It's very reminiscent of Donald Trump's 2016 campaign for president, where he said very outlandish and crazy things to get attention and to get media attention that he ended up actually acting on, whether it was immigration bans or other items that made life difficult for people of color in America.
Yeah, he's also said that he doesn't believe in the existence of white supremacists. How does that play? How does that impact the broader electorate, and particularly in light of suggesting, and particularly in light of the fact that there is a rise in white supremacy?
Yeah, it's very dangerous rhetoric. I think it's dangerous rhetoric in two ways. I think one, it obviously discounts the issue, right? You don't get down to the root cause of the problems of what is going on in our public education system, what is going on in our dense urban areas, what is going on when it comes to social services. How can we make sure that these are here for the next generation? How can we make sure that some of the most vulnerable people, the most historically marginalized people, continue to get the help that they need? But I think it's also dangerous when you think about individuals out there who hold extreme beliefs and feel like violence is the answer. I look at Florida as an example, unfortunately, in August, when the gentleman went into Jacksonville and committed violent acts against Black people on purpose. When you look at Florida, Florida is probably one of the most right-wing states in the country in the last 2 years when you look at legislation. So if a place like Florida, where an individual still feels emboldened to enact violence against people of color, even when the state's legislature is going and trending in a more extreme, more right-wing bend and arc, it shows that this is still very dangerous rhetoric to be using in a nation where there are individuals, unfortunately, that think that they have to take the matters into their own hands and endanger folks. And again, when you're talking about folks that have historically been on the margins, these are folks that are historically also used to having a target on their back and feeling like they have to operate and move in society a certain way in order to protect themselves, protect their neighborhoods, their communities, and their children. And it's just really unfortunate. And I think that when individuals like Vivek Ramaswamy or his mentor, if you will, in Donald Trump, use this kind of language, and they say, well, I'm just saying what I'm thinking, or I'm just saying how I'm feeling. It, one, again, discounts the real issues. It discounts the real harm that it does to folks. And it only leaves me with two options. Either you haven't done the work to learn about the systemic issues in our country, or you have done that work and you're willfully ignorant of it.
Well, I'm going to throw it over to Lauren and Denise in a moment, but just before I do that, just tell everyone just briefly about American Bridge 21st Century.
Sure. American Bridge, as you talked about in the opener, is a communications firm and research outfit that works to make sure that some of these items about the Republican candidates for state office, for president, for Senate are known by the electorate. I mean, when you're thinking of doing extreme things, when you have an extreme agenda, you usually don't say, these are the extreme things that I'm going to do on day one or during my time in office, right? Sometimes it's said with a smile. When we look at Vivek Ramaswamy, it's said in a way that's a little more palatable, that doesn't jar people's conscience when they hear it. And so it's really up to American Bridge and organizations like us to do the hard work, to do the research, to look at their records, to look at their statements in public, to shine a light on things that some of these individuals may be saying when they don't think the cameras are on, when they don't think people are paying attention, and to connect the dots a lot of the times also for folks when what are they saying on the campaign trail and what are they doing when they're actually in office, just so that folks have a better understanding of who these candidates are and what the real world implications may mean for them if they assume power.
So Stacey, if you don't mind, I want to jump in really quick because I know Lauren's going to put it all in perspective for us. But I'm the man or woman on the street, and I'm so glad to meet you, Brandon, and to hear about this organization because we desperately need it. But it's hard not to ask, who is this man? Where did he come from? How does he end up being on the stage, as we talked about earlier, with seasoned politicians that have a track record? What is it, that he's done to be such, to have us talking about him this morning? Where did he come from? Please help us.
I mean,
can we put him back under the shell? Where did he come from? And center stage of all places.
That's a great question. I mean, he's a businessman who started a pharmaceutical company that was very successful, and now he's become a very rich person that thinks that he can lead the nation. I think in the last segment, someone said that these are not serious people, and it's not a serious party that is interested in serious governing. And I think that when you look at Vivek Ramaswamy or any of the individuals that are on the debate stage, you look at Donald Trump and all of his legal troubles and his troubles outside of his run for president, none of these folks are serious people. And I think that when you say where they come from, I have a great question. I feel like that's a great question for all of them. If we could put them back where they came from, I think that would be a good idea also when we talk about the future of the country. But they're not serious people. Vivek Ramaswamy has spent the last month trying to capitalize off of a debate performance, and what he's done is taken every opportunity to get in front of a mic and say outlandish things like the public school system is a ghetto experiment, right? Or to call a sitting member, a Black woman of Congress, compare her to the Grand Wizard of the KKK. I mean, these aren't serious people, unfortunately.
Lauren?
Yeah, I'm a little confused as to why any organization, whether it was American Bridge or anybody else, would have to explain to us people like Ron DeSantis or Vivek Ramaswamy. What it comes down to in our modern technology of communications is flooding the box of information with the reality that we're dealing with, a sort of George Wallace, Lester Maddox Part 2 group in American politics after the election of the first Black president. So there's no research, in my view, needed to reveal that Vivek Ramaswamy is a racist and so is Ron DeSantis. That's factual on its face. They're using race, they're using Black people as a wedge to get white people excited to vote and engage in the next election. And of course, with Donald Trump as their nominee, that's not particularly difficult because that's what Donald Trump stands for as well. So I wonder why the Democrats are not investing a whole lot of money into flooding into what the Republicans do, quite frankly, right? They created The Blaze, they created Daily Caller, they created, Fox News to flood the box with misinfo and disinfo in an age where the technology has made it very easy for anybody to get any information out that they want. And to me, if you're not building platform to counter that specifically, you're making a mistake. And we saw with the attack on the U.S. Capitol exactly what misinfo and disinfo can do. These people appeared in federal court saying that they believed that the election had been stolen with absolutely no evidence whatsoever that the election had been stolen. So that is working. It's working for them. And on the left, we're getting a lot of sort of think tanky things that don't counter that specific problem of misinfo and disinfo. And I'm somebody pissed off, not at American Bridge. I'm reading Marty Barron's book right now and finding out that he's just as confused as everybody else, even though he freaking led the Washington Post. So I'm just saying that we know what Vivek Ramaswamy is. He's not going anyplace. He's Bobby Jindal. He's not going anyplace. He's going to run his mouth. He's selling a book. He's not going to be president of the United States. He's not going to be the Republican nominee. We all know that sitting here right now, factually, right? So the question then is, what are we doing with the information that he puts out there, particularly with regard to Black people who often don't have a media platform to fight that specific problem? Now, maybe American Bridge is doing that, Brandon. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure how much research you need to figure these things out with these.
No, I think the point is well taken, and it's not the first time that someone has said, hey, the left needs to have a larger media infrastructure, right? A larger bullhorn to combat the Fox News, the Newsmax, all of these right-wing platforms that have been created over the last decade, 2 decades, in order to, as you said, fill the box with information and misinformation. But I think that's also why American Bridge exists, right? We are here to generate headlines, to generate news, to generate these talking points that we need on the left to be able to point and say that here's the evidence, here's the ammunition to back up our claims about Vivek, about the GOP, about the entire slate, about Donald Trump, et cetera. But I totally agree with you that it would be a much better landscape for Democrats and for folks on the left if we did have a little bit more of investment in our media infrastructure and ecosystem on the left. Absolutely.
So, Lauren, what is CNN and MSNBC to us?
CNN has been confused about their leadership over the last 6 to 7 months.
Have.
It's starting to recalibrate, okay? But, MSNBC is really the DNC channel, just as Fox is really the RNC channel. I'm not saying, we have a free country, First Amendment, they can do whatever and have whomever they want on their air. But the problem on the Democrat and the problem on the left is often not a problem with not uniting in message, because we have these Democrats who want to be Republicans. You're going to see that in Virginia, by the way, with Abigail Spanberger. We have Democrats who are confused. I'm going to be very specific. We have white Democrats who are confused about this issue of trying to get, quote, moderate Republicans to vote for them. See, Joe Biden ended that confusion in 2022 because he went all in and said, I'm going for Black voters. I'm going for Georgia. I'm going to appoint a Black woman to the Supreme Court. I'm going to have Black America's back. He said that, okay? And then he did it. And so when you run to your base and you get your base out, as the Republicans verify for us in every election, and your base is Black women and then number 2, Black men, and you get those people excited, as Barack Obama and then Joe Biden demonstrated, that works. We have a piece of the Democratic Party, a lot of white Democrats who want to play this game of not saying anything, quote, offensive to the same group that Donald Trump is going after. And that is an issue that goes to messaging, because the reason their messaging works is because they're united, even when it's ridiculous, even when they're lying, even when it's crazy, they're united and they say the same things. And the people who disagree shut up and keep their mouth shut. The Democrats don't do that. They run their mouth and dilute their messaging.
Yeah, and to your point, and I'm gonna throw this to you, Brandon. There was a moment on the floor with Matt Gaetz himself yesterday during that circus. He went on to say that the Republicans, under the leadership of McCarthy, basically he destroyed his own party. Right? We are blocking this. We're doing that. He's stopping progress. We are stopping. These are moments where it seems like, with all the commercials that the parties do, that the candidates do, that's a commercial for a Democrat, right? And Democrats don't often, to Lauren's point, take advantage of these, whether you want to call them missteps or just the incompetency or the unwilling to govern by these Republicans. They don't often seize the moment. I think the last time I saw that, when the White House tweeted out something maybe a year ago, and now it's escaping my mind, but they seized upon something, and I can't remember. It'll come back to me. But the point is, they don't seem to seize upon these moments where Republicans, not only do they seize upon these moments, but we see Roe v. Wade. They've been working on that for decades, and they were steadfast. They got it done, right? Affirmative action, they got it done. They've been working on it for years. What is the issue with Democrats? What do you see the issue? What does American Bridge 21st Century see the issue that Democrats just simply can't get their messaging together?
Well, I would say in the last week, I think there's two examples of Democrats doing exactly what you said you wanted to see. So when you think about using Republicans' words against them, for example, I believe the Biden campaign or the White House used Nikki Haley's words against her when she was talking about how the president keeps talking about going union and how unions are so good and how workers are so good and how workers should fight for their rights. That's something that Joe Biden, President Biden believes in. And he ran a digital ad using those exact words, saying, yes, I am pro-union. Yes, I am pro-worker. Yes, I do want you to be able to make a living wage. Yes, I do want you to have the benefits and safe workplaces that you're advocating for. And then I believe a few days later, he used Ron's words from the debate stage, again, in another ad, talking about how the previous administration increased the national debt and made certain policy choices that weren't good fiscally for the nation or fiscally for mainstream homes pocketbooks. So I would push back a little bit on the fact that Democrat messaging is in disarray. I feel like there are very effective messages coming out from Democrats, from the White House, from Joe Biden's campaign that are effective. Now, to the point of having sharper messages and being all in the same accord and reading from the same hymn. I think that again is a problem that's been happening for the Democratic Party for a very, very long time. And you're talking generations, and the reason being is that it's really, really difficult, right, to advocate for change, to advocate for progress when a lot of people have different visions of what that is. It's really easy to say no. It's not hard to say no. And that's what we see the Republican Party doing time after time after time when we ask for rights for women, reproductive rights, when we ask for rights for workers, when we ask for help for Black and brown folks, when we ask for actual affordable health care, affordable housing, all of these items that will make lives, that we know that the data shows will make lives better and easier for people in this country. At every turn we hear no. It's really easy to do that.
Yeah, what I was trying to think of in Power 96 it was Marjorie Taylor Greene. She had criticized the Biden's loan forgiveness, student loan forgiveness, and the White House tweeted out that Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene had $183,500 in PPP loans forgiven. So that's when and this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes, well, where it's not sometimes anymore. You often now have to fight fire with fire, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so we talked about the racialized political rhetoric, right? In American politics and how Ramaswamy's comments fit that trend, particularly in comparison to past instances. We remember President Reagan's welfare queen's speech, right? American Bridge is bringing a lot of things to light on its website. What else? How else are you getting this message out? And is it being received? Do you believe, Brandon, that you're getting a wide enough audience to hear this message?
I believe we are, and again, I think it's because we are doing our best to affect how the race is being covered. It's not just about getting that message out to veterans. It's again trying to get the mainstream media to pay attention to issues like this. It's very few in between, have we seen this kind of issue be raised up on some of the platforms like you talked about when it comes to CNN or MSNBC about this specific rhetoric in the race. And so I believe that there is a large megaphone that we have in order to be able to talk about these issues and to affect how the race is talked about, how the race is covered, and again to bring up some of this the truthfulness to light about these candidates and about what they want to do for their agendas for this country.
Yeah, and we know, of course, Lauren and Denise, there is this anti-Black strategy across the board, and Black conservatives are participating. How troubling is that Black conservatives are going along with this? We know Clarence Thomas, we know Tim Scott, et cetera, et cetera. That's extremely troublesome.
Well, I'm going to pull a quote from from a great Shiro, um, which is "And still we rise." So, you know, we and that was Maya Angelou. I was quoting or saying similar to what she said, but yeah, and still we rise. I mean, we continue to do the work, and these things, have historically happened. Black folks have been facing opposition since day one, so that's not new news. But we need to have people that call them out. We need to be able to say, what you're saying is incorrect, and call people racist when they are in fact that, put the label on them. But I mean, I don't know what else. This is America. What else can I say about
that? This is America. That's what she can say about it. Lauren, I'll kick it to you.
Well, I mean, I think that there needs to be a united message on certain things that are very low-hanging fruit, that are very obvious and easy to go against. Vivek Ramaswamy and the things that he says, and Ron DeSantis and the things that he says are very easy. It shouldn't just be a few CBC members and then that's about it. I mean, I'm wondering where some of our white Democrats are on some of this messaging, quite frankly. We had a situation in Florida where DeSantis is running his mouth about repealing Black education, this, that. And then some people get shot at a dollar store, and we have a Democratic Jacksonville city councilwoman get up and effectively block him from getting booed out off the stage. That made no sense. Okay. But aside from that, we just, Black folks in America have no allies in the same way that other groups have allies. If somebody says something against other groups, everybody's all in, whether it's David Chappelle or whoever it is. And then when something very obvious happens, I mean, we've been seeing video after video now, ever since the advent of the cell phone camera, okay? We've been seeing the same thing that Malcolm X was talking about back in the 1960s, the same thing that John Lewis referred to at the March on Washington, police brutality, right? And the Democratic Party, otherwise known as white Dems, decided to bail on that issue because they didn't want to go up against oh, you're not pro-cop, you're trying to defund police and all of that, and basically gave up on an issue that Black people do care about. Those are the moments where I say to myself, if we were members of another group, would that be happening? And I think the answer is obviously no. Like I said, there's some low-hanging fruit in the messaging that every Democrat should be able to go against pretty easily, and we can't get we Black Democrats out there, the CBC, the stuff that they talk about, you can't get a lot of white Democrats to push in the same direction. That is a problem in the messaging. That weakens the messaging. It weakens the messaging as much as I have, lauded some of the moves that Joe Biden has made with regard to the Supreme Court and some other things. He's not that great on crime because he was, of course, an author of the Clinton crime bill, main author of the Clinton crime bill. So, I mean, there's certain moments where I'm like, are you kidding me? Some people got murdered at a dollar store, and not everybody is on the same page. And Vivek Ramaswamy is an easy one. He's so easy that it's almost like I personally think he's irrelevant. I think he's a waste of messaging time because he's not going anyplace. But somebody like a Donald Trump, who says things like there are great people on both sides after a race, riot in Charlottesville, Virginia. I mean, that's easy to message against. So it should be easy to message against. And I think sometimes the silence is deafening from some of the folks in the Democratic Party who want Black voters and want Black support and want Black people out there knocking doors for free. I mean, we see that all the freaking time in the Democratic Party. Now, you're right about the Republicans, the Byron Donalds. Of course. I mean, the Republicans are going to get Black people who say dumb stuff against Black people. Those are the only Black people they like. Black people who hate Black people are the only Black people Republicans like. So, of course, we saw it with Tim Scott at the debate last week. But I think the Democrats need to get their act together before we go lecturing anybody else.
But we also, I don't disagree with that. We also see with American Bridge 21st Century, they are bringing the issues, right? We see the website, we see the Brandon with the talking points throughout, not just with us, but in other locations. Is that just part of your mission? Just to tell us a little bit more about your mission?
Yeah, I was actually going to jump in and say that I think you're right? That we do need to have some of these low hanging fruit and some of the issues that are that we all should all agree on that are right in front of our face. There shouldn't be people that are afraid to speak on them, no matter what they feel like that pushback is going to be. And I think that's again a part of why American Bridge exists, to be able to turn over the rock and have all of the mud and the bugs and the nasty stuff up under there and point it in people's faces and say, hey, look, this exists. This isn't just a fringe idea. This isn't just an extreme element of the Democratic Party. These are real things that are happening in our politics, in our country, that need to be addressed. And hopefully what we feel like, again, is that it makes it, one, easier for our candidates or people that call themselves Democrats, whether they're elected or not, to be able to engage on those issues. But again, for the mainstream press, the individuals that get a lot of the shine, that get a lot of the attention, that cover these items and have a lot of access every day, for those individuals to be able to write the stories in the correct frame, or write the stories that matter, ask the questions that matter, ask the questions that folks on this panel, folks that are watching, folks that are at home think about every day when they hear Ron DeSantis say something crazy like, there were benefits to slavery, where people sit around their table and they hear that and say, what the heck is he talking about? Right? So that folks are able to know that these things are happening, that they can push back on it, and that there is ample cause and reason to push back on it as well.
Well, last word for Lauren and Denise with Brandon Weathersby.
Well, I would just say that if the American Bridge, as Lauren said, provides a resource for American voters who are concerned about how they're going to get their student loans paid, or whether they're going to continue to get, their Social Security, WIC, health benefits, all the things that really do pocketbook issues that are lifestyle issues that impact American voters, particularly Black voters. If this is a place where they can go to find out, where the candidates stand on these issues, in addition to race, I think we've got a winner here. But people really are concerned about survival right now. And these politicians have to speak to that.
Yeah, people are concerned about real bread and butter issues that impact their day-to-day lives. And they want to know how government is helping them with that. That's the answer that they want. And that not having that answer leads to a lot of apathy, and it leads to a very good question, which is, why am I voting? Why am I participating in a system that doesn't seem to be changing my life in a fundamental level? And that level of apathy is huge. I don't have anything against American Bridge. I do think it's a little bit corporate. I mean, like a lot of these things obviously are corporate funded and corporate driven. So you're going to see a lot of issues that impact the corporate wing of the Democratic Party, or the things they care about. I mean, just to name an example, I see you have on here the issue of Title IX with regard to Trump repealing the Title IX rules under Betsy DeVos. And of course, that's a main champion issue of the National Women's Law Center, which is very corporate and all that. I get it. But that is a ding. As much as I'm not a Betsy DeVos fan, that's a ding to due process. There is no due process in the Title IX rules. And for Black people, that's a thing. Due process is a thing. And when you get accused of something serious and have no way to defend yourself, that's a problem. And we got a kid that won that suit at Yale, and he's probably going to bring that. That's probably going to end up at the Supreme Court, because there's no basic due process when somebody gets accused of a serious sex crime on a campus, which, by the way, is, as a person who's a daughter of law enforcement, I'm not sure why colleges would be dealing with that issue anyway. That should be law enforcement. It's a serious issue that law enforcement should be dealing with. But to me, that's a very corporate thing to not have that discussion about how due process should be. And I know National Women's Law Center doesn't believe in due process. Okay. But that's a very corporate thing to see on the website of American Bridge.
But I think it's a part of a pattern, right? Again, if you're talking about a pattern of an anti-Black strategy across the board when it comes to Republican candidates or Republican platform or Republican elected officials, I think you see the same thing when it comes to reproductive rights, when it comes to protecting women in this country. And so I think that's a little bit more of where American Bridge's work is. So again, I'll just push back a little bit on the
Brandon, let's be real. We're talking about reproductive rights, which we should be after the Dobbs decision. We sure as hell should be. But we're really talking about that. We're talking
I'm-
about that. Well, just
Lauren,
one
they're
thing.
gonna take us off air, Lauren. I'm
No,
sorry.
one
We're
second.
after
Stacey.
8:30.
We're talking about that because that's where the money is. That's
Right.
where Emily's list is. That's where Planned Parenthood is, and that's no problem. I'm just saying that's the reason why we're talking about abortion all the time.
Right.
I mean,
And
that's-
I get it, but Greer's gonna take us off the air. We are beyond Brandon's
Brandon, you're a
time.
good guy.
Brandon-
You're a
No,
good guy.
thank you
David-
very much. I appreciate this discussion.
David Youngblood
Hang in
says,
there, makes you stronger.
yeah,
No,
David
Brandon, you're
Youngblood,
great.
our viewer, one of our viewers says, Brandon, you keep doing this. This is sorely needed. And we thank you so much for joining the Black Presses Let It Be Known. We thank Denise Rolock Barnes, the publisher of the Washington Informer, and of course, Lauren Burke, who is a Capitol Hill. And she also has her own news outlet as well. Check her out. I get the emails
Black
every
news, baby.
There you go. Exactly. Thanks all.
Thanks, Stacey.